Welcome to another edition of Who's Better Baseball, the podcast where we answer a simple question on each show. Who's better at baseball? I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein, managing editor at justbaseball.com. Got one of our writers here, Elijah Evans, a really awesome piece that just went out talking about pre-arb extensions. I'll take a little bit of credit. It was my idea, but Elijah did all the work for me on this one. And, answer the question this week of who's better. It's what team is getting the best value on these deals. And so we're going to rip right through the last 2 years. There's been 15 pre-arb extensions. We'll start you off right at number 15. The least valuable pre-arb deal, Miles Straw.
Yeah, it's
You
not
know,
much to say on Straw. It feels harsh, because $25 million over 5 years isn't a ton. It's only $5 million a year, but Miles Straw is one of the worst hitters in baseball. End of the day, I mean, he's a good center fielder. He does a good job out there. Cleveland likes him. I mean, he's bottom of their order, but he's got speed and he plays defense. But end of the day, like it's just not a guy you should be extending for 5 years. There's when you're looking at a pre-arb deal, you're looking at guys that you can get better value on than what you'd be paying in arbitration. And there's no way Miles Straw is making more than $5 million a year in arbitration based on how he's played in the last 2 years.
exactly. It's some guys just ride out the system that's going to manipulate against the players, particularly the ones that aren't going to, make a ton in arbitration. Get to Aaron Ashby. Similar thing, maybe trying to jump out a little bit early, 5 years, 20.5 million. Probably not much we can say there, but injuries has been the big problem with
Yeah.
Ashby.
Yeah, it's just a health thing with Ashby. I honestly do like him. When he pitched last year at times, I thought, this could be a guy that could be really solid for the Brewers. He was more of a swing man last year. He can be good in the pen. He could be a 4 or 5 starter for them. I think he could easily make this value on this deal look good in 2 years from now. But as of now, you just can't really. It's hard to judge given that he's been hurt.
Well, now we get to two big money deals, relative to a pre-arb extension. Andres Gimenez and Brian Hayes, where we can have an interesting discussion on where we put them. I definitely agree as Gimenez being a worse contract, 8 years, 106.5 million. Hayes is 8 years, 70 million. So there's the money there, but it's also two guys that right now are really only drawing their value from the defensive side. And as much as Gimenez was a Gold Glove second baseman, even though he hasn't, I think Arenado has still taken all of the awards from Hayes, right? Up to this point. But
Yeah.
at some point in time, they got to look at the metrics and realize that Brian Hayes is the best defensive third baseman in baseball right now.
That's a big statement there, considering some of the other third basemen. But you're not wrong. I mean, there's a real argument to be made there. I think, first of all, I mean, last year you look at the value of Gimenez, and he was great on offense. I mean, he showed more last year on offense than Hayes has at all in his career so far. But then this year he struggled a lot, and a lot of this contract ranking is based on since they've signed the contract. And Gimenez signed it this past offseason, so this is his first year in this 8-year deal, getting paid a lot more money than he was originally, and his offense has not been there like it was last year. He just has not been the same player at the plate that he was last year for Cleveland. And you look at Hayes, who has been slightly better with the bat. He hasn't been great, but he's shown some signs, especially the last few weeks. Actually, he started to pick it up even more. And the bat is getting a little better. And like you said, he's a Gold Glove caliber third baseman, and that already provides value. And he's coming at a more affordable rate than Gimenez right now.
Yeah, I wrote a whole article on Andres Gimenez, and honestly, if you put this contract 15th, I wouldn't have been mad at you because, look, Jimenez was great last year. There's every chance he returns to it, but his numbers are too scarily close to what he did in 2021, where he got demoted and really struggled. He's literally hitting the baseball softer than anyone in the game right now. And that contract gets pretty scary in the fact that, he's pretty much getting paid in the early parts of the deal what he would have got paid in the arbitration system. But then they bought out like 3 years of free agency at $23 million per. And I have no idea if he's ever going to. I mean, last year certainly was a $23 million
Right?
player, but I don't think you had to make that decision now. And
Yeah.
maybe they thought that Jimenez was, here's the guy they got for Francisco Lindor, and Lindor, left, they had to trade him because they couldn't pay him. Maybe they got a little bit concerned that, hey, this is the guy that pairs with Jose Ramirez. Let's lock him in at an affordable rate. But if he's even his career norms, he's not going to be worth that contract. And his career norms are ballooned by one incredible season last year where he hit into a lot of good batted ball luck too. I mean,
Yeah.
his BABIP was like 350. which will
Yeah,
happen due to his speed, but it's I'd be very nervous if I was a Guardians fan on that contract right now.
yeah, it's definitely a little scary. And I think, like we had talked about before, I think part of it is also you have to factor in the team and the market and the style of spending. And with Cleveland, like that's not a team that spends money a lot, right? Cleveland's a homegrown talent team. That's how they roll. They still spend here and there. And obviously they've spent on Jose Ramirez and, Shane Bieber and whoever else it's been over the last, decade, but they're not a team that's going to spend a ton. So when you're looking at a team like Cleveland, whose payroll is never amongst the highest, paying $23 million a year for a player that might be average, maybe. I mean, he might have a year where he gets back more towards last year where it's a little better, but I don't know if he's ever going to top what he did last year. So if you're assuming he's worse than last year and you're a small market team paying $23 million a year for that, it's a really scary position to be in. And I think that's why I think it wasn't that hard for me to rank Hayes above him, honestly, because it's a cheaper deal, it's Gold Glove defense, and it's not like they've been that different offensively this year.
Yeah, no, and honestly, even with just like the batted ball profile, like I could see it clicking for Hayes.
Yeah.
Like you said, if he launches a little bit more with Jimenez, I mean, he's a guy that has really good, instincts. He's got a really high IQ, and he's a guy that, he could still be a solid, Gold Glove second baseman for them and a nice table setter. But I'd be nervous, particularly because he doesn't walk. But I don't want to spend the whole time on
Yeah.
Jimenez. Let's move down this list. Garrett Whitlock, 4 years, 18.75 million. What do you think about this contract?
I honestly think this is solid. This is kind of a place where it comes into like how much value you're getting and the positional value too. I mean, Whitlock's been kind of this in between starter reliever thing last year, and then this year they seem like they want to make him a starter. I think Whitlock has shown the ability to be fully capable, and he's had signs of he had some bad luck last year. I think he had better expected stats with his FIP and his xERA and stuff last year than he did with his actual numbers. So I think he has the potential to be better than he's been so far. This year, he's gotten off to a bit of a shaky start. Started the season hurt and has been a little bit rough in a few of his games so far, but has shown the signs of a competent pitcher. And it's under $20 million, so it's not a huge contract. I think you could get back of the rotation solid innings from Whitlock, and you'd be happy with that at that contract. I don't think there's nothing to complain about, but it's also maybe a guy you could have waited a year or two on, given that he hadn't necessarily shown a ton. But I don't hate the deal in general.
Yeah, kind of the next one falls right in line with that. It's just
Yeah.
deals where they bought out the arbitration. They didn't really have to, but they did, and they did it on affordable rates. And that's Trevor Steven, 4 years, 10 million. Good reliever. $10 million,
Yeah.
4 years. There's really not much
Right.
we could really say there. I don't think we have to spend too much time on them. The next one's more interesting. You got Keibert Ruiz, 8 years, 50 million. It seems like maybe he's at least a decent defensive catcher. You got 8 years. Not a bad number though. It's kind of a cheap deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not that bad. I don't hate it. I think we haven't quite seen from Keeper what we were hoping to on the offensive side when he was coming up with the Dodgers, when he was traded. I mean, I think there was a lot of hype around him being, a really well disciplined at the plate and consistent, makes a lot of contact, doesn't strike out a lot. And he's shown that, but we're still not quite getting that next level of consistent line drives, elevating the ball. And we've seen a little bit more of it this year. He hasn't been great at the plate, but again, $50 million, 8 years. I mean, it's like a little over 6 million a year. It's really not. It's not a bad situation for a guy who is going to be a stable catcher behind the plate. He's proven to be quality defensive. He's got offensive upside. And again, finding a catcher that is like behind the plate and consistent. I mean, this is a Mets fan. I know this is a White Sox fan. It's hard. It is not easy to find a stable defensive catcher with some amount of offensive upside. And I don't know if Ruiz is going to be a guy who can reach that, Will Smith, Sean Murphy level catching, or at on the offensive side of the plate. Like I think he's always had a lot of offensive potential. I don't know if he's ever going to be an elite offensive catcher, but you really don't need to be an elite offensive catcher at that value. I think the value they're getting for him, it's quality value. I think it's a bit risky. I think there's a chance that he really doesn't elevate offensively at all, and he ends up just being a below average bat. But even a below average bat that can catch really well is not bad at that value.
No, it's not. And I think up to this point in the list, like it's not a contract I'm worried about, where it's
Right.
like I could make an argument that like Brian Hayes could slide all the way up to this slot.
For sure.
At the same time though, if the bat continues to not get there and it falls off even worse, which is still a possibility, like you said, comparing market to contract and where he's playing, that could get to be a little bit more of a scary deal where there's less risk in the dollar amount here.
Right.
We get to some elite relievers here where it's like their contracts are great. It's just the fact that they're relievers that they end up where they do on this list. Andres Munoz, 4 years, 7.5 million. We got him eighth. And I want to combine him here with Emmanuel Clase, 20 million, a little more money, but 5 years. Good deals for great pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, these two are phenomenal. There's really not much more you can say. Munoz, the only reason I had Clase even at a more expensive value is he's a closer and he's one of the top 3 closers in baseball. Munoz could be a closer. He definitely could be a closer with the stuff he has. He's been more of the setup man for Seawald in Seattle the last 2 years. But, these are both excellent deals. If they, it's hard to rank them higher. I think if you're purely looking at nothing, if you're ignoring positional value and looking at the money you're getting for the quality of player in comparison to the average player at their position, I think both of these two could easily be top 3 on this list if you think of it that way. It's just that the 6 players above them just have so much more potential impact on the team than a relief pitcher. But these are excellent deals. They did the right thing, locked him up early. You might not have needed to for the first year or two of both of these guys' arbitration, right? Like, I don't think they're getting a ton, but I mean, honestly, they both probably would get more than their average salary in these contracts in arbitration, given that they've both been the top of their class as setup men and closer. So I think they're excellent deals. They're both two of the best relievers in the game. It's about as much as you can say.
Yeah, and like you said, it just comes down to the value with these next 6 players where they can be, all-star contributors at, premium positions.
Yeah.
Which is where we get to Michael Harris, because you can make the case that Michael Harris is going through a similar season as Andres Gimenez. He has not swung the bat well at all. At the same time, I think we just see the potential there for Harris, and it's a better contract. I mean, I know Gimenez was an all-star and he was on the team the whole year, but thinking of where you were in relation to arbitration and the fact that they got Harris in Atlanta for 72 million over 8 years, where literally, even if he hits like this, he'll be like Gold Glove center fielder, not getting paid, on average more than 10 million a season. It's even though the offense has been bad this year, and that's why he doesn't crack our type 5, where last year he would have. It's such a cheap deal.
And he's younger than Gimenez too.
Yeah.
So you factor that he's 2 years younger than Gimenez. It's a way cheaper deal. It's about the same deal as Brian Hayes. And he was the rookie of the year last year. And again, there's such a high level of expectation for him that I am confident putting him this high, even with his struggle to start the season. He's got great speed. He's at a Gold Glove caliber center fielder last year. He's going to be good in the field. It's a premium position. He's 22 years old, so this contract only takes him through his age 30 season. So he's got plenty. I mean, that's not even. He could still have prime years after that, right? So you're getting him for all of his 20s, which is just excellent value. And he's already started turning around. I mean, I think it was just a matter of when, in my opinion. I know, like, his batting average being under 200 right now, and people are like, wow, he's really struggling. And he has since May 26th. These stats are as of 2 days ago when the article published. But, since May 26th, he already had a WRC plus of 111. OPS was almost at 800 in the last few weeks compared to his, under 600 OPS throughout the season this year. So he's already getting there. And again, no matter what, this contract isn't financially destroying the Braves. Like, there's no world where this contract harms them significantly. I think there's a world where he's more of an average hitter with elite defense and elite speed, which is still not bad value for $9 million a year on average. But I also think he's better than that and will get back to being more like he was last year, because he's just incredibly talented. And I refuse to believe that he's just going to fall way down this list at any time soon, honestly.
I think it's way more likely that he ends up at the top of this list. You know what I mean? Than at the bottom. Like, there's that chance that he's the guy who was last year. And if he's the guy who was last year over, even 6 of these 8 years, the value they are getting is insane, because when we get to the top 4, you start to get some big money.
Yeah.
Number 5,
Hmm.
I know when we were kind of prepping the article, I wanted you to include Hunter Green in the top 5, because starting pitcher who I think has, well, we know has all the potential in the world, and the contract really good, especially for this team in this market.
Right.
6 years, 53 million for a guy that could be your ace, or if not, maybe they find that ace out there. They could have had Luis Castillo be their ace still,
Hmm.
but a guy that, if nothing else, is going to be at that dollar amount, a number 3, and we know the upside's there to be better.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's the right way to look at it, because it's he right now he might not be better than Michael Harris was last year. He hasn't gotten to that point at any point where you say, he's been better than Michael Harris. But I think Green got a little unlucky last year, actually. He should have been even better. I mean, he had 12.77 Ks per nine, which for a starter is insane. We know his stuff is ridiculous. He's going to continue to rack up strikeouts. He's getting better and better with his pitchability, his location. You're seeing it improve year by year. And like you said, for the situation that Cincinnati's in, this value is perfect for them. They have a ton of young hitters. I mean, you look at their system right now. They're bringing up a guy every other week who's just raking. And I mean, McLean and Ellie, of course, and then Steer's been amazing this year. CES is on the way. Like their hitting system is excellent right now. The future of their offense is there. The pitching is where it becomes a concern. Lodolo's been hurt. Ashcraft's having a down year. The only guy that's been really great for them this year that is part of their future. I mean, Andrew Abbott just came up, so give credit to him. He's a top prospect. He's going to be really good. But the only consistent factor all season this year in the rotation has been Hunter Green. And you look at him and you say, like you said, the value for that team, given the amount of young hitting they have, locking up a guy who is going to be a top 3 guy in your rotation for the next 6 years at that value is an excellent deal for the situation that Cincinnati's in.
Especially because he's a guy that I could see putting up the type of stats that would really do well in arbitration anyway.
For sure.
So, if he's a guy that would have got to arbitration and made, whatever it is, let's just say it's $40 million across arbitration years, you've gotten more value. I imagine they picked up a year of the free agency. So,
2 years,
it's
I think.
2 years. So
Yeah, I
even
believe they got 2
better,
years
even
arbitration.
better.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's a really nice contract. Now we
Yeah,
get
awesome.
to, top end talent. Julio Rodriguez falls at number 4 on this list. Tough to decide between these names when everyone
Yeah.
kind of don't jump and say, why is J-Rod here? For one, a little bit of a slow start to this year, but I don't think we're really fazed by that. It's a big contract though. 12 years, 209 million. It's not like he got a small pre-arb deal. It's a pretty hefty deal
Yeah.
that has a lot of
And
escalators that can make it very, very lucrative.
what I was going to say, that's the 209 million is like the generic what they report as the deal, but there is a lot more complexity to this deal. This deal could be something that J-Rod opts out of, so there's risk there with Seattle. I believe it's after 5 years that he has an opt out. So he has an opt out, which could be really harmful for Seattle if he continues to progress in the direction he was last year. But then also, if he is great, which he also most likely will be great, I'm really, as you said, I'm not buying stock in his slow start this year. His data is still great. He's going to be good. He's starting. I mean, he's going to get back on track. But if he is as good as projected and he sticks around, there's a chance this deal is like, I think it's up to like 300 and something million. I mean, this could be a mega contract for a guy who's signing pre-arbitration. It's the biggest so far, just the standard value, and it could be even more. So the contract is huge. Yes, 4C. It seems crazy to rank J-Rod at 4, just because of how amazing he was last year and just the amount of well-rounded. I mean, he's a 5-tool player, right? You don't see many 5-tool players. It's true. It's hard to imagine. I think people weren't super high on his defense, but he's improved his defense a lot. His speed is amazing. He's got tons of power. I mean, he's a great hitter and fielder and everything. But I think you look at him and it's a big deal. It is hard to fully conceptualize this contract, and I think it is a bit of a risk, but you're not worried about it if you're Seattle. You love this deal, of course.
Yeah, and look, you compare it to the top 2 on this list, and I'm going to jump over 3 and circle back to it just because it's comparing similar players.
Yeah.
Corbin Carroll and Wander Franco are just on better value contracts. It's not that they're better players, although you never know. Both of these guys, they might end up being. That's how talented all these guys are. But again, the contracts that they were signed to, Corbin Carroll at number 2, 8 years, 111 million. And the more he plays, the more you could say maybe it's better than Wander. But at the same time, Wander Franco, it's an 11-year deal, 182 million. And oh, yeah, he's been like leading baseball in F4 for a lot of the season.
I mean,
So
if I don't know if you saw this, but right now Corbin Carroll and Wander Franco are 1 and 2 in F4. So this, I mean, this list was so hard to rank, these top four, especially because we're gonna get to three in a second. But when you look at those three positional players with Julio and Corbin and Franco, I mean, they're all incredible. That's not, you can't question that. And it's really just about looking at the value. And for me, where I decided to give Wander the edge over Corbin and J-Rod was the fact that he's getting, it's cheaper than J-Rod, but he's getting that 11 years. 11 years is a lot. I mean, they're buying out 3 more years of his free agency than the Diamondbacks are getting with Corbin. And the way
and
Corbin,
also,
yeah,
I just have to add into that with Wander. And like you talked about, for the franchise, to have that player locked to that number in
yeah.
that place for that long is huge. It's huge for them.
Yeah, that's completely right. And I mean, the more you watch Corbin, the more the Diamondbacks are probably like, damn, we should have added a few more years onto this contract after seeing what he's doing this season, because I mean, he's unbelievable right now. And I think last year people would have saw the Wander deal after, last year he was hurt a lot and he didn't look great last year at times. So I think last year people would have seen the Wander contract and been like, this might have been a little bit of an overpay considering it was a pre-arb deal, whatever. And no, it wasn't an overpay. It was frankly an underpay for all these, for both Corbin and Wander. When you think about it, because I mean, they're the two best players in baseball by F4 right now. And I mean, they're going to both be, they're perennial superstars. There's really no question. And they're incredibly young too. I mean, these guys are going to be, they're still going to be in their prime when these contracts end. That's what's crazy about it. I mean, they're that talented at such a young age that they are still going to be in the prime of their career when these contracts are ending. So it's just that you can't get better than these two deals. This is the reason why pre-arb is becoming popular. These two players right here, like point blank, are the reason why these contracts work, and they backfire sometimes, like we're talking about with Jimenez. But these two players are truly the exact reason why you extend guys early. You have faith in your guys that you've developed. They both came up in these systems. They were grown. They're homegrown talents. They're incredible. And the team said, you know what? We trust you. We believe in you. We're going to give you a deal and make you the face of our franchise. And it couldn't be working better for these two teams and players.
I think, and when we look at these pre-arb deals, I feel like it's becoming this trend, but it can get out of hand with the Jimenez's. It can get out of hand. Even again, we think Michael Harris is a good value deal, but I think there's a difference in the type of prospects that Carroll and Wander were than these other guys. And you're taking more of a gamble when you have a guy that pops and has a good season, you give him a deal, compared to a guy that was always supposed to be that in your first taste you see it. And I think that there's teams that are going to get burned trying to replicate this model when they have their best prospect who wasn't necessarily a best prospect in baseball. Again, not to harp on Jimenez, but it's like, they wanted to sign one of these deals because they're a small market. So they said, who's our best young player? It's Andres Jimenez. And so they give him the deal, but they don't really kind of look at the full scope of it. But then you have, from a Mets perspective on my end, like I'm looking at this team right now and saying, give Francisco Alvarez the contract right now. Give him the deal because he was always a top 100 prospect. He's showed up and he's, leading baseball among catchers and home runs. Just jump on it, but don't give Brett Beatty the deal right now. Wait a little bit, get a little more time, because he's a guy that had some issues, became a top 100 prospect off one great minor league season. And now, the early sample size isn't great. So it's just knowing your own players, which is the most important thing in these
deals.
Exactly. And that's what gets you to the last contract that we have yet to discuss, number 3, but the number 1 pitching contract. Spencer Strider, $75 million, 6 years. The guy, at this point, right there as far as being one of the nastiest pitchers in baseball, especially with DeGrom out, and that's value that you can't beat it.
Not just one of the nastiest, but is there a better pitcher in baseball this season than Spencer Strider? I'm not sure. I mean, I know he has days where he struggles, and I think he might not ever be the guy who's consistently every single start perfect. He seems like the guy who might have a tendency to get hit hard once in a while, have a really bad game here and there. It's been kind of his style the last 2 years. I was really tempted to put him 1 on this list just because an average of $15 million a year for Spencer
Goodness.
Strider. I mean, this is an ace, right? This is not like, and look at the scope of starting pitching right now. I mean, the Mets just signed Justin Verlander, who's a million years old, for over $40 million a year. And you're getting Spencer Strider for $75 million over 6 years. It's really an insane contract. The only thing that makes him not be above a Corbin and a Wander for me is the risk of pitching and just the injury risk there, because he throws incredibly hard. He's a tough pitcher. He's great, but pitching is always more risky. It's just how it is, especially with extensions. That's why you're not going to see, the 10-year extension, even for a guy like Strider. You're going to see more of that 5-6 range for pitchers usually, because of the risk that just comes with pitching. But this value is as good as it gets. If you tell me Spencer Strider is guaranteed healthy the next 6 seasons, this is number one on the list. I don't care. I mean, Corbin's great, Wander's great. This value is insane for a guy who's a top pitcher in all of baseball at his age and at his point in his career. And that's why the Braves are the masterclass of baseball contracts right now. I mean, they've done this multiple times, and they've, between trades and contract extensions, they're killing it right now. And I know that's hard for you, but it's the reality of the league right now. I mean, they're Alex Anthopoulos is doing a great job building that team, and they are just, I mean, they're doing it the right way, and they've grown this talent. Strider wasn't even, a top prospect, and he's now the ace of their pitching staff. He's going to be the ace of their pitching staff for a long time, and this deal is perfect for them and for him.
If we were to expand it out to just all contracts or even pre-arb contracts further back, you could have included Ozzy Albies on this list because of how ridiculously cheap that deal is. Of course, Acuna, yep. The fact that they got Olsen and Murphy on decent numbers. So yeah, the Braves are doing it. And to compare the Hunter Green deal and the Strider deal, and the fact that over 6 years, talking about over average annual value, what is it? I mean, less than 5 million,
4 million-ish more a year for Strider.
More, exactly.
Yeah.
And
for Spencer Strider, right?
Strider compared to Hunter Green, where Hunter Green we're thinking, okay, if everything breaks right over the next 6 years, maybe one day he'll have a season as good as the one that Strider already had and is in the midst of.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's crazy. It's Strider. This contract is nuts, really. I mean, all of these top deals are great. I love every deal from 9 down. I think is great value and is long term going to be a positive move for all of these teams. But Spencer Strider, I mean, it's crazy watching him pitch the way he is right now. And yes, there's injury risk. That's pitching. That's how it goes. But the Braves knocked this one out of the park for sure.
They did. Hate to say it, but they did. The Mets knocked him up for a bunch of runs the other day, and he still the Braves still won because they had so much talent over there. That's gonna be all for this edition of Who's Better Baseball. Make sure in the description you check out this full article. It's an awesome read from Elijah, and check out all the other good written content we got coming your way at justbaseball.com.